right, boys and girls, today we're going to read out of our Wisconsin Adventures book, and you should have one that's close by. Otherwise, you could also use the text that's located on the website, which you could download. So the first unit we're going to work on is the land, and you can see that it starts on page 7. You will also have your learning guide here, which you will record your answers to. So make sure you put your name and your date, if you're Mrs. Hoffman or my class, and you're going to let me know if you read it independently or recording. Now for today's purposes, most of you will be reading it and listening with it because I'll be giving you lots of hints today, okay? Alright, so if you look at your paper, you'll see it says Chapter 1, The Land, and it says the Ice Age. The main idea of the Ice Age is, and what you're going to want to do is find the main idea of the first lesson or the first heading. You're also going to look for supporting details. You're going to make a bullet list, okay? And I'm going to help you do that. So what I suggest is you follow along carefully and pause whenever you need to. Now, you're going to have a book, but if you ever get stuck at home, you can also look at this text online. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our first page, and you can see the first heading says the Ice Age. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's begin reading. First of all, I'm going to read the heading that's located here at the bottom. Giant mastodons roamed North America from 3.75 million to 10,000 years ago. Mastodons are related to mammoths and modern elephants, and you can see a page in your book to the left. Now remember, anytime you need to, you can also pause the recording to review what you need to think about or to write. Here we go. Follow along. Long ago, Wisconsin was a land of mountains, plateaus, and plains. An ancient people ranged across the land, hunting game, including huge elephant-like mammoths. There was plenty of food for both the hunters and the animals. The Ice Age. The weather turned much colder. Mountains of ice, called glaciers, moved down from the north. The glaciers moved down 4 times, each time melting and then coming again. Sometimes a glacier grew to be a mile thick and many miles long and wide. It moved over the land like a giant bulldozer. When the glacier moved, it crushed and shifted everything beneath it. Move to the next column. Ice covered Canada and many northern states. It covered almost all of Wisconsin. Only the southwest corner was not covered by ice. Food was very scarce. There was not enough for the huge mammoths to eat. They died out. The hunters and their families moved south to warmer lands to find food. The ice covered the land for a long time. This period of time is called the Ice Age. During the Ice Age, people and animals lived far south of Wisconsin. Each time the ice moved south, its great weight changed the way the earth looked. It crushed everything in its path. It flattened plateaus. It dug wide ditches through the rocks and soil. When the ice melted the last time, the land surface had changed greatly. Land in the north of Wisconsin was rich enough for trees to grow. The south was mostly rolling plains. Alright, so now let's go back to our learning guide and let's think about what the main idea would be. So if what I just read was the Ice Age, the main idea is what? So I have to think back. What was the one thing that I need to remember from just this section? Remember the whole idea of if you ever had to leave your house quickly, what's the one thing you'd take? What's the most important thing? So if you think about it, really, it's during the Ice Age, it really changed the way Wisconsin looks. There were giant sheets of ice that changed the way the land looks. That sounds like a main idea. So there are giant sheets of ice that covered parts of Wisconsin and changed the land. So now that you know that, that's basically your main idea. So pause the recording and write your answer. Alright, so now the next thing we need to do is we need to find details. Details that will support our main idea. Those are like facts, okay? So now, what we need to do is go back to our text, and what we need to do is look for some details. So I know the main idea is that ice covered a lot of Wisconsin. It changed the way the land looked. So I might want to say something like, as a detail is, what mountains of ice are called glaciers. It was miles long. Um, it shifted everything beneath it, the land. Hunters, families moved to warmer areas. Ice moved south and it changed its way. It flattened plateaus, it dug things. So then when you go and put your details, you need to put 3 details. They don't have to be sentences. They're just going to be some words or phrases. All right, pause the recording and make your answers. All right, let's go to the second section. And this one is called After the Ice. So we're also, again, going to think about the main idea of after the ice. Okay, after the Ice Age. So follow along. The last glacier melted over 10,000 years ago. Wisconsin was left with many rivers and streams. Thousands of sparkling lakes lay between rolling hills. In fact, Wisconsin lies between the largest lake and the greatest river in the nation. Thus, its climate is often milder than that of nearby states. Wisconsin winters are still very cold, however, and the summers fairly hot. The climate in the northern part of the state is cool and wet. In the north, snow covers the ground for about 140 days each winter. The long winter makes the growing season short. In the south, the climate is warmer and drier. The south gets some warm air from the Gulf of Mexico. Still, snow covers the ground for about 85 days each winter. Rain usually falls between May and September. Water from rainfall and melting snow brings moisture for growing crops. The glacier affected the soil. In some places, it left behind deposits of minerals and decayed plants and animals. In those places, the soil is very rich. Good soil is found in the southeast part of the state, near Lake Winnebago. Rich soil is also found in the Fox Valley and along the shores of Lake Michigan. There is good soil also in the driftless area in the southwest where the glacier did not reach. If you read the caption, it says Wisconsin's northern forests have many evergreens, also called conifers, because they produce pine cones. Fine crumbled sandstone forms soil in the Central Plains. It is too sandy to be rich farmland. With good farming practices, farmers grow some crops, such as hay and potatoes. So now I need to go back and look at my learning guide, and I need to figure out the main idea of after the Ice Age. Remember, the whole idea is what's the most important thing I'm going to take from that article. So I guess I would have to say that the land changed again, and probably for the better, right? So the Ice Age actually helped some parts of our area, didn't they? Because they left some good soil, didn't they? So pause recording and write your main idea. Now we're going to look at finding some details. So now I need to have 3 details. Remember, they don't need to be sentences. They can just be details from what you read about. So think about what are some important facts that helped you with the main idea. Now, I also remember a lot from this little unit. The glacier affected the soil. Remember, it deposited minerals. That's a good thing. The soil's really rich in lots of parts of Wisconsin. You could also say that something about different soils are good for farmland and some is not. And you can talk about why is the climate different, or how is it different after the Ice Age. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back and put 3 details that help support that just in that section. Then we're going to read about the forests, and in this area we're not going to take any notes on that. Alright, so now we're going to listen and read the section called the forest. Now this one we don't have to think of the main idea, but think about what you think is the most important thing. You can at least think that, right? After the ice melted, the area did not look as it does today. There were few plants of any kind because it was too cold for them to grow. The caption says, Wisconsin northern forests have many evergreens, also called conifers, because they produce pine cones. I'm going to read the next section here. White spruce, black spruce, red spruce. Over a long time, the climate grew warmer. Trees began to grow and forests spread across the northern part of the state. Spruce, white pine, aspen, and hardwood trees grew thick. They became so thick that people could get lost in the forests. Evergreens such as pine trees grew thicker in the north. Hardwood trees, including oak and maple, grew thicker in the south. By 1900, the forests were almost gone. The trees had been cut down for logs, lumber, and paper. Replanting and proper care have restored many of the trees. They will never look like they did before people cut them down. Wisconsin still has paper mills. However, most of the wood pulp they use make paper comes from Canada. And the caption says, Wisconsin has over 8,000 lakes. This is like Winnebago, the largest lake in Wisconsin. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at rivers and lakes. We need to find the main idea here. And I have my main idea of rivers and lakes, that section, and then I also need to make a bullet list. Alright, so when you're ready, here we go. Rivers and lakes. When the glaciers melted, the land warped upward. When the shape of the land changed, drainage changed. The rainwater and melted snow drained to the rivers and lakes. Because of the changes, some streams flowed to the east and some to the west. Over 20,000 miles of rivers and streams drain water from the state. The Wisconsin River flows west to the Mississippi River. Then the water flows south to the Gulf of Mexico. The Fox River, the Wolf River, and Lake Winnebago form a water system. Water flows eastward from this system into the Great Lakes. From the Great Lakes, it flows into the St. Lawrence and on into the Atlantic Ocean. The Wisconsin and the Fox Rivers flow close to each other near Portage. They flow in opposite directions. Lake Superior and Lake Michigan border the state. They are two of the 5 Great Lakes. The other 3 are Lakes Huron, Ontario, and Erie. All of the Great Lakes were formed by glaciers. Melted glacial ice filled the lakes with water. Water borders the states on 3 sides. Lake Superior forms part of the northern border. Lake Michigan forms most of the eastern border. The Mississippi River forms the western border. Wisconsin is in the Midwest region of the United States. 4 states share borders with Wisconsin, between Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. Illinois shares the southern border. Iowa and Minnesota border. Wisconsin on the west. About 70,000 to 12,000 years ago, big areas of ice covered Wisconsin. The fingers of the ice that cover the area are called lobes. This map shows the main lobes of ice that were in the Great Lakes region long ago. There are over 8,000 lakes in the state. The largest is Lake Winnebago. The Dells are a favorite tourist spot in the state. Near the Dells, the Wisconsin River flows through the narrow gorges. Scenic forests and cliffs overlook the Swift River. It is a beautiful and unusual sight. So now I'm going to go back to my learning, and I look at the main idea of rivers and lakes is. So if I go back to my text, I have to take the most important thing that I walk away with. And I have to think about, you know what, the glaciers really changed the way Wisconsin looks, doesn't it? But one of the biggest things were the glaciers created rivers and lakes, didn't it? So isn't that really what I should really think about? Is that really it changed because the river and lakes were created by the glaciers. So what you need to do is figure out how are you going to write that and tell me, because that was the main idea. We also need to think of a bullet list. So then I look for details, okay? Now, I might also talk about how the shape of the land changed, how ice melted and then formed the rivers. I could talk about the Great Lakes were made by the glaciers. So this is going to end. So then you need to go back and give me 3 details. Remember, they don't have to be sentences at all. This is going to end this first part of the recording. So make sure you double check your work and pause and rewind when you need to.